I knew something was wrong before I knew a single word of it. And a man who runs a great house learns to trust that feeling the way a sailor trusts the smell of weather. It came to me at the long table in the steward's hall, where I take my breakfast before the family is awake, with the morning sheet folded by my cup the way it has been folded every dawn for 30 years. I am the chamberlain of Renfeld House, Aldous Mercer, if you want a name to put to the trouble, and it is my office to know where every key hangs, every candle is counted, and every word that is said in the private rooms stays in the private rooms. That last is not written in any ledger. It is the oldest rule below stairs, older than the house itself, and on that gray morning I read it broken in plain print. The sheet that week carried a column about the Dowager's Council, not gossip I could have laughed at. This was the very phrase Lord Marshal Hale had used 3 nights before in the Green Cabinet behind a closed door, with the candles snuffed at the windows so no shadow could be read from the court. A house divided at its own hearth. I had stood at that door myself. I had heard him say it, and here it sat in cold type, inside quotation marks, as if the writer had been in the room with us. I put the cup down without drinking and sat very still, and the hall went on clattering around me, the boot boy at the grate, the still-room maids counting linen, and none of them felt the floor tilt the way I felt it. A house keeps its secrets the way a body keeps its blood, quietly, inside, where the keeping cannot be seen. When the blood begins to show on the outside, you do not need a physician to tell you something has been opened. Someone in Renfeld was carrying our words out the door. I am not a man given to drama. I have buried 2 masters and dressed a 3rd for his wedding, and I have learned that the worst things in a great house arrive softly, in slippers, not in boots. So I did the only thing a chamberlain can do at such a moment. I folded the sheet, I finished my rounds as if the morning were ordinary, and I began to watch. The thing I could not yet say aloud was how it was being done. The Green Cabinet has no window a man can see through. Its walls are double-built, packed with horsehair against the cold and the eavesdropper alike. The old lords of Renfeld were a suspicious line, and they built for it. The door is kept by a footman during a sitting, and after the room is locked and the key returned to my own board. The papers of the council never leave the cabinet save in the locked dispatch box, and that box I had counted with my own hands. There was no hole in the wall. There was no missing page. And yet the words walked out, somehow every week, dry-shod and whole, to be sold like fish in the market. I want you to understand the size of it. It was not coins from a drawer. Coins can be replaced, and a thief in the end is only a thief. This was trust, the marrow of the house, and you cannot lock trust in a box. Once the family below the great roof begins to wonder which of its own served the wolves outside, the house is finished as a home, whatever the stone may say. I had watched a lesser house die of exactly that wound, and I had sworn it would not happen on my floor. So I told no one, not the steward, who is a good man with a loud mouth, not the dowager, who would have torn the household apart by the roots and lost the very thread I needed to follow. I kept it close, the way you keep a coal alive in cupped hands, and I went looking for the one man in Renfeld who watched without being watched. His name was Prout, Corporal, once Sebastian Prout, of the Renfeld Guard, who stood the post on the servants' passage at the foot of the back stair. You would have walked past him 100 times and remembered nothing of him, which was precisely the point. The great ceremonial men, the ones in the bearskins at the front gate with the crowds and the painted iron, those are the face of a house. Prout was its quiet eye. His post was a plain stone corridor where the work of the place came and went, the coal, the linen, the trays, the dustmen, the day girls, the throat of the house through which everything that feeds it must pass. He had stood there 4 years. He never spoke unless spoken to, and I had noticed, long before this trouble, that nothing moved through that corridor that he did not see. I had noticed something else too, though I had filed it away as a curiosity. The man had been a courier in the army before he came to us, a runner who carried sealed orders between posts in country where a wrong turn or a wrong face meant a man did not come back. He had told me that once in 3 sentences, the way he told everything. And a courier, I came to understand, does not learn places. He learns movement. He learns the rhythm of who goes where and when, until a single step out of its proper hour rings in him like a struck bell. That, more than any musket, was what Renfield had in Prout and did not know it owned. I went down to the passage that evening on a made-up errand about the wine cellar count, so the kitchen would think nothing of the chamberlain on the back stair. Prout stood at his post in the lamplight, still as the stone behind him, his eyes going over each passing soul the way a miller's eyes go over grain. I stopped beside him as if to check a tally on the wall. "Corporal," I said low, "I am going to tell you a thing, and I need you to keep standing exactly as you are while I say it." He did not turn his head. "Sir, words are leaving this house, words spoken behind a locked door in the Dowager's own council. They are appearing in the press whole and exact within days of being said." I kept my own eyes on the tally as I spoke. "I have counted the room. I have counted the box. There is no hole in the wall, and so I have come to the conclusion that the words are not being stolen. They are being carried out on 2 legs, through a door I cannot watch and you cannot leave." For a long moment he said nothing. A scullery maid passed with a pail, bobbed at me, and went on. When she was gone, Prout spoke, and what he said put a cold finger straight down my spine. "Which door, sir?" "That is what I do not know." "No," he said, "you misheard me. I asked you which door because there is only one in this house that a man could carry words out of without my marking it, and I have been wondering for 3 weeks why a certain man keeps choosing it." I turned and looked at him then, full in the face, and the ordinary stone corridor seemed all at once to lean in and listen. "You have seen something." "I have seen a man take the long way to a short errand," Prout said, "every week on the same evening with a coat too heavy for the weather. I did not know there was a crime in it. Now you have given me the crime." His jaw set very slightly, the only motion in him. "Give me a little time, sir, and I will give you the door the words walk out of." I should tell you what it is to wait inside a wound. For the days that followed, I moved through Renfield as I had moved through it for 30 years, and every face I passed in the corridors I now had to study and let go again, study and let go, because any one of them might be the one. The under-butler, who had a sick wife and a need for money, I knew of. The clerk who copied the council's fair notes in his fine, schooled hand. The Dowager's own page, who carried so many trifling messages a heavy one might hide among them. I had loved this household. Now I weighed it man by man like a money-lender, and the weighing shamed me, and there was no help for the shame because the alternative was to do nothing while the house bled. The hardest part was the Dowager herself. She is not a soft woman. She has held Renfield together through 2 bad harvests and a worse cousin, but she trusts her own roof the way most people trust the ground under their feet without thinking of it at all. I watched that trust begin to fray. The second column appeared 4 days after the first, sharper than the last, with a private remark she had made to Lord Marshal Hale about a marriage she did not favor, and I saw her read it at breakfast. She did not cry out. She set the sheet down with 2 fingers, very precisely, as if it might bite, and looked round the room at her people, and in that one slow look I watched a great lady learn to suspect her own house. It aged her more than the bad harvests had. I would have given a year of my life to have spared her that look, and I could not, because the only cure for it was to find the leak and stop it, and that meant letting it bleed a little longer while we watched. I went back down to Prout's post each evening on one pretext or another, and each evening he gave me a little more, in his clipped courier's way, never guessing, never coloring it, only the shape of what he had truly seen. "It's the same evening every week," he said the 3rd night. "The night after the council sits, never the night of he's careful, but the night after, when the talk has had time to settle and be written down clean somewhere. He comes through near the end of my watch, when the trays are heaviest and the passage is thick, and a man might be missed in the press of it." "Who is it?" "I won't name him yet," Prout said, and I respected him for it, though it cost me to hear it. A name said too soon is a man hanged on a feeling. You taught me the size of this, sir. Let me be sure. He shifted his weight by a hair, the most I ever saw him fidget. But I'll tell you what's wrong with him, and you'll know him by the wrongness if you watch. He carries his coat closed in a warm passage. He takes the long route out by the laundry court when the kitchen door is nearer his errand. And when he passes me, he greets me. Every time. Good evening, corporal, regular as a bell. Is that wrong, a civil word? From a man with nothing to hide, it's nothing, Prout said. From a man with something under his coat, it's a coin laid down to buy my ease. The honest ones don't think of me. I'm the wall. The guilty one always notices the wall because he's measuring it. His eyes moved over a passing maid and dismissed her. He's measuring me, sir. He just doesn't know I'm measuring back. I cannot tell you how that steadied me, the calm of it, the patience. I had come down those stairs the first night half-wild to tear the truth out of the house by force, and here was a man who had stood in one stone corridor for 4 years and learned that the truth, like everything else, has an hour, and you have only to be standing at the right post when it walks past. The great house above us ran on rank and gold and ceremony. Down here it ran on a man who would not be hurried. But the press did not slow to suit our patience. A third column came, and this one did real harm. It carried the rough draft of a charter the council meant to grant, a matter of land and water rights that touched 3 lesser houses, and it carried it before the thing was settled, so that 2 of those houses took fright and pulled back, and a year of quiet work by Lord Marshal Hale fell apart in a morning. I watched the Lord Marshal arrive at Renfeld white to the lips, and I watched him and the Dowager shut themselves in the green cabinet, and through the door I heard not the words but the temperature of them, and it was the temperature of a house beginning to turn on itself. That night the Dowager sent for me. She received me in her sitting room with the third column on the table between us, and she did not waste words. Mercer, you have run this house for me longer than anyone living. Tell me plainly, is there a traitor under my roof, or is there a hole in my wall? There is no hole in your wall, my lady. I have looked. There is a man. I watched her take that and take it hard and master it. Then I will have every servant in this house questioned tomorrow, and the household searched to the bones, and we will have him out by nightfall. My lady, I said carefully, if you do that you will lose him. Her eyes came up sharp. Explain yourself. Question 200 frightened people and you will frighten the guilty one most of all, and a frightened man stops. He stops carrying. He sits very still and waits for the search to pass, and the leak dries up, and the moment we lower our guard, believing it ended, it begins again, because we will never have caught the man, only scared the act. You will have your peace for a season and your traitor for life. I held her gaze. Worse, you will have taught your whole household that you suspect it. 200 loyal hearts will learn that their mistress thinks one of them a wolf. You cannot unteach that. The house would never again be a home, and the man who did it to us would walk free in the ruins, knowing he had broken Renfeld with 3 columns of newsprint and the trust we threw after them. She was silent a long moment. She is a clever woman, and I watched the cleverness work behind her face. You are telling me to do nothing. I am telling you to do nothing that he can see asterisk, I said. Carry on as if the columns merely puzzle you. Let him grow easy, and give me leave to set one quiet man to watch one quiet door, and to lay a single piece of bait that only the guilty hand will take. We will not catch the act by searching for it. We will catch it by letting it happen one last time, with our eyes open and our hand ready, on ground of our own choosing. It is no small thing to ask a great lady to sit still while her house bleeds and trust the bleeding to a chamberlain and a corridor sentry she has likely never noticed. I have asked few harder things in my life, but the Dowager of Renfeld did not hold the house through 2 bad harvests by being a fool. She looked at me a long moment, and something in my steadiness must have answered something in her, because at last she folded her hands. 1 leak more, she said. 1. If your quiet man does not give me my traitor with it, I will do it my way, and God help the innocent. She let that settle. Who is your quiet man? A corporal of your own guard, my lady. You have walked past him 10,000 times. A faint, tired thing crossed her face that was almost a smile. The house is full of men I have walked past. Pray to heaven one of them is worth more than the one who sold me. She waved me out. Go, set your trap. And Mercer, I stopped at the door. If you are right about all of this, you have known it for 2 weeks and carried it alone rather than wound this house with a wild search. I will not forget that. I bowed and went down to find Prout, and now I had what he had been waiting for, leave to act and a single shot to spend. I want to be honest about what that descent cost me, because it is the truest part of this story, and the part a man is tempted to leave out. To go down those stairs carrying the dowager's leave to trap a man inside her own house. To know that I, the chamberlain, the keeper of the keys and the counter of the candles, was about to lay a snare for one of the very souls it was my whole office to keep, sat in me like a sickness. I had spent 30 years making Renfeld a place where a servant could grow old in safety, where a man's word was taken because it had never been broken, and now I was about to prove, with my own hands, that one such word had been a lie for 11 weeks. There is no clean way to do that. There is only the necessary way, and the necessary way leaves a mark. I told myself on each of those stairs that I did it to keep faith with the 200 who had not broken theirs, that the snare was for the one so that the search need never fall on the many. It was true. It steadied me. But it did not make the stone in my chest any lighter, and I have come to think it should not have. A man who can trap his own household and feel nothing has no business keeping a house at all. He was at his post. I told him the whole of it in the cellar at the foot of the stair, where the lamp does not reach and a low voice does not carry. When I had finished, he was quiet, the way he was always quiet, and then he gave me the name. It's Crisp, he said. Under Pantler, Lemuel Crisp. I knew the man, a neat, pleasant fellow of 40, 8 years in the house, who kept the lower pantry and the council's small comforts, the water, the wax, the carrying of the dispatch box from the cabinet to my board after a sitting. My stomach turned over. Crisp carries the box. And here is the thing, sir, that I could not see until you told me what was missing. Prout's voice was very level. I told you the words could not be stolen, no missing page, the box counted whole. That's true. The page never leaves, but Crisp carries the box from the locked cabinet to your board, alone, down a passage with one dark turn in it. That walk is the only minute in all the week when the council's papers are in one man's hands, out of every eye but his own. He let that land. He doesn't need to steal the page, sir. He only needs the page for the length of one dark turn, long enough to read a line or copy it, or set it to memory if his memory's good. And then he carries the box on to you, whole, counted, honest. The theft leaves no hole because nothing is taken, only learned. I stood in the dark cellar with my own house turning strange around me. 8 years. The man had wished me good morning 8 years. Then the words are in his head, when he passes you on the back stair. In his head or in a scrap of paper next his skin under that heavy coat, Prout said, which is why he closes it warm. And on the night after a council on the long route by the laundry court, he carries them out the one door I cannot follow him through, the tradesman's gate to the lane where someone, I'd wager, is waiting to take them off his hands and put them in print. His eyes found mine in the dark. So, you wanted the door the words walk out of. There it is. Now what do we put in his hands that he cannot resist carrying through it? The bait we settled on was a small, perfect thing, and I am still a little proud of it, in the cold way a man is proud of a hard sum got right. We would see the next council with a single false morsel, a secret invented only to be stolen. It had to be a thing no one outside that locked room could possibly know, so that, when it surfaced in print, there could be no other explanation but that it had walked out of the council in a man's head or his coat. And it had to be a thing the press could not resist, so that whoever bought our words would rush it into type and spring the trap on himself. The Dowager and Lord Marshal Hale would speak it, gravely and in confidence, into the closed green cabinet, that the house meant within the month to recall its eldest son from his post abroad to take a hand in the very land and water charter the leaks had wrecked, a piece of news that would have set 3 counties talking and every rival house scheming. It was entirely untrue. The eldest son knew nothing of it and would stay exactly where he was. But it would be spoken behind the locked door, written into the fair notes Crisp would carry past the dark turn, and then it would either stay our secret or it would not. And if it did not, the man who let it out would have told us in print with his own treason exactly what he was. I will not pretend I slept well in the days before that council. To set a trap inside your own house is to admit the house is no longer wholly yours, and the admission sits in a man like a swallowed stone. But the alternative was the Dowager's 200 frightened faces, and I had sworn against that. So I held my course and did my rounds and wished Lemuel Crisp good morning at the lower pantry with a steady face, and he wished me the same, neat and pleasant as he had for 8 years, and I felt the steadiness it took to do it and wondered, for the first time, what steadiness it had taken him. The council sat on a Thursday, as it always did. I stood the door myself that night, which I had not done in years, on the excuse that the matter under discussion was delicate. The candles were snuffed at the windows. Lord Marshal Hale spoke his lines about the eldest son with a soldier's flat conviction, and the Dowager answered them, and I marveled at the 2 of them, lying so well in so good a cause. When the sitting rose, the fair notes were sealed into the dispatch box, and the box was given, as it was given every week, into the careful hands of Lemuel Crisp to carry the 40 paces from the cabinet to the chamberlain's board. I watched him take it. I watched him bow and turn and walk away down the passage toward the one dark turn, the box level in his hands, his step unhurried, and I thought, somewhere in that walk tonight, a good servant of 8 years will become a thief, or he will not, and there is nothing more I can do but let him choose where I cannot see. He brought the box to my board 4 minutes later, whole and locked, and wished me good night. The next council was the following Thursday. The bait would have a week to work, a week in which Crisp would carry his stolen morsel out the laundry court route on the night after the sitting, hand it through the tradesman's gate, and wait for it to bloom in print. Prout and I had 1 week to be standing in the right place when it did. We did not watch Crisp. That was the discipline of it, and it was Prout who held me to it. Every nerve in me wanted to set eyes on the man and follow him to the gate, and Prout would not have it. "Follow him and he feels it," he said. "A guilty man has a sense in his back like a second face. We don't watch the man. We watch the door the same as I've watched it 4 years, no different, so that when he comes to it the night after the council he sees nothing changed, just the wall he always greets, standing where it always stands." He almost smiled, which on Prout was a remarkable event. "The trap isn't a net we throw, sir. It's a hole he walks into, because we left everything exactly where he expected it." There was one bad night in that week of waiting, and I set it down because it taught me more about Prout than all the rest. The day girls had been sent home early on account of a burst pipe in the laundry court, and the wash had to be carried up by the kitchen door instead, which meant, for one evening, that the long route Crisp favored stood empty and watched, while the short route ran thick with maids and pails. I came down in a sweat over it, certain we had spoiled the whole trap, certain that Crisp would see the changed traffic and smell the watcher in it and sit still for a month. Prout heard me out in the dark and shook his head, once. "Leave it be, sir. A trap you keep adjusting is a trap a clever man feels through the floor." He nodded up the passage at the unusual press of maids. "He'll see the pipe burst. He'll see the wash come the short way. He'll think nothing of it because it has an honest reason any fool can see, and an honest reason is the best cover a watcher ever gets. The day you start moving things to suit your watch is the day the guilty man learns there's a watch. We change nothing. The house had a burst pipe. That's all that happened tonight." And he was right. Crisp came through 2 nights later by his own long route, easy as ever, having read the burst pipe exactly as Prout said he would, as the ordinary trouble of an ordinary house, and no business of his. I have thought since that this is the whole secret of the quiet ones. They do not bend the world to catch a man. They stand still in the true world and let the man bend himself. So the night after that Thursday's council, I came down to the cellar at the foot of the back stair as I had a dozen times now, and I waited in the dark with the lamp turned low, and Prout stood his ordinary post at the head of the passage as if it were any ordinary night. The trays went up. The day girls went home. The coal came in. And near the end of his watch, in the thick of the passage when a man might be missed in the press of it, a neat, pleasant figure of 40 came through with his coat closed warm in the warm corridor, taking the long way by the laundry court, and as he passed the post, he turned his head. "Good evening, Corporal." "Evening, Mr. Crisp," said Prout the wall and let him pass. We did not move. That was the whole of it and the hardest part, to let a thief walk by within arm's reach and do nothing, because the door was not the proof. The print would be the proof. So Crisp went out the laundry court route to the tradesman's gate and threw it into the lane, and came back 20 minutes later lighter at the chest, and wished Prout good night, and the wall wished him the same. And then we waited for the morning sheet. It came 4 days later, and it was everything we had hoped and dreaded. There on the page, inside its neat quotation marks, was the eldest son of Renfeld, recalled within the month to take a hand in the charter. The precise false morsel, spoken behind a locked door into a sealed council, now sold to the whole reading world. No man living could have known it but the 7 souls who had been in that cabinet, and 6 of them I would have answered for with my life. The 7th had carried the box. I took the sheet to the dowager myself. She read it once, set it down with those 2 precise fingers, and looked up at me, and the look was no longer the frayed, suspecting look of a fortnight past. It was iron. "It is true, then. He has told us himself." "He has told us, my lady. Now I would ask one more day's patience, to take him in such a way that there can be no doubt and no harm to the innocent, and to learn the door the words go out to, so we cut the root and not just the stalk." For that we needed to follow the words one stage further than Crisp to the hand that waited in the lane. And here Prout's old trade earned its keep at last. He did not follow Crisp. He had a quiet word on his own time and his own coin, with 2 men he trusted as he trusted few, the night carter who brought the morning coal up the lane, and the lamplighter whose round took him past the tradesman's gate at that very hour. Ordinary men. Invisible men, the way Prout himself was invisible. He asked them only one thing. On the night after a council, near the end of the backstair watch, who stood in the lane by the Renfeld tradesman's gate, and where did he go after? The carter knew him at once. A clerk's runner, he said, who had been loitering the lane on Thursday nights these 2 months and more, and who walked off each time toward the printing house on Candlewright Street, the very house, as it happened, that set the type of the morning sheet. So now I had the whole chain, link by link, from the green cabinet to the printed page. The council's words, spoken behind a locked door, carried whole in the dispatch box down the one dark turn by Lemuel Crisp, who needed the page only for the length of that turn, carried out the tradesman's gate next his skin under a heavy coat, handed in the lane to a printer's runner, and set in type on Candlewright Street to be read at 10,000 breakfasts, hours among them. Not a hole in the wall. A path through the house, walked on 2 legs every week, by a neat and pleasant man who wished me good morning. I will not draw out the taking of him, because there was nothing grand in it, and Prout would not have allowed there to be. We did not want a scene in the corridor, a wild flight, a struggle that might let the man cry persecution and muddy the water. We wanted it quiet and clean and certain. So on the next council night I did a small, deliberate thing. I told the underpantler, in passing and in confidence, that the dispatch box that week carried the council's true decision on the recall of the eldest son, to be acted on at once. I watched him receive it. I watched the neat, pleasant face keep its neatness, while behind it a man weighed a last great prize and decided to carry it. And the night after, When Lemuel Crisp came down the passage in his warm coat, taking the long way by the laundry court, Prout was not the only thing waiting at the head of the stair. I was there. The dowager's steward was there, and the Lord Marshal and a magistrate's man brought quietly in by the garden door. We let Crisp come on. We let him reach the post. And when he turned his head to lay down his civil coin, "Good evening, Corporal," Prout, for the first time in 4 years, stepped off his post and stood in the middle of the passage, square in the one way through, and did not move. Crisp stopped. "Corporal," the neatness flickered. "Let me by, man, I've an errand." "You have," said Prout, very level, very quiet. "Out the laundry court by the long way to the tradesmen's gate, where a printer's runner has been waiting on you of a Thursday these 2 months. I know the errand, Mr. Crisp. I've watched you carry it 11 weeks. He did not raise his voice. He did not raise a hand. He simply stood, the wall come at last out into the road, and the whole stone passage seemed to hold its breath around him. "What's under your coat goes no further than this post tonight." For one moment I thought Crisp would run, and I think Prout thought so too, because he set his weight without seeming to, the way a man sets it who has stood between sealed orders and the men who wanted them and lived. But there was nowhere to run. The passage was a throat, and Prout was the knot in it, and behind Crisp the magistrate's man had quietly closed the way back. The neat face came apart by degrees, the way a wall comes down, not all at once, but stone by stone, and the man who had wished me good morning for 8 years put his hand inside his warm coat and drew out a folded scrap of paper, close written in his own fine, schooled hand, with the council's invented secret on it, and the recall of an eldest son who was not being recalled at all. He held it a moment. Then he gave it, not to the magistrate's man, but to me, because in the end below stairs is below stairs, and I was the keeper of the words he had broken faith with. "They paid well," was all he said, and I told myself it harmed no one, only words. "Only words," I said, and I found my own voice was not steady after all. "Mr. Crisp, the house runs on words kept. That is the whole of what we are. You did not steal coins. You stole the one thing this roof cannot be a home without." I could not say more. The shame of him was a real grief to me, and I will not pretend otherwise. I asked him before they took him the question I had carried for weeks. "Why Lemuel? 8 years. Why?" I did not ask it as the man who had trapped him. I asked it as the man who had hired him, who had watched him grow from a nervous young pantler into the neat, sure fellow who kept the council's small comforts, and who had thought until a fortnight past that he knew him. He looked at the floor a long moment. "A man came to me in a public house, a year gone," he said at last low. Said he only wanted to know which way the wind blew at Renfeld, nothing taken, nothing harmed, only a word here and there of what the great folk were minded to do. He paid for the first word before I'd half agreed to give it. And the first word was easy, sir, because it was only a word and no roof fell in. So was the second. His mouth twisted. That's the whole trick of it. There's never a night you can point to and say that was the night I turned. There's only 100 small evenings, each one no worse than the last, until you look up and you're a man who carries the council out the back door in his coat and tells himself he's harmed no one. He met my eyes then, and what was in his face was not defiance. It was a kind of horror at himself. "You count the candles, Mr. Mercer. I should have let you count me sooner." I have turned that answer over many times since, and I think it is the truest thing he ever said in my hearing, truer than 8 years of good mornings. Treason in a great house does not come in like a thief over the wall. It comes in like a guest, by small degrees, one easy evening at a time, until the man who would have died before opening the gate to an enemy has held it open 100 nights without once feeling the cold come in. That is why a house needs its quiet watchers, not for the bold thief, who is rare, but for the slow one, who is in every house that ever stood, and who never knows the hour he became what he became. The magistrate's man took him then, with no struggle and no noise, out the garden door into the dark, and the scrap of paper went with them as the plain, whole proof of the thing. a council secret close written in the underpantler's own hand, on a night he had no honest reason to be carrying any such thing toward a printer's gate. The runner in the lane was taken the same week, and the trail ran on from him to a desk on Candlelight Street, and the morning sheet that had grown so fat on Renfeld's secrets printed, in the end, a small stiff line saying it would print no more of them. The leak did not slow. It stopped, the way a thing stops when you have not frightened it but found it. The Dowager called the whole household together a few days after in the great hall under the painted roof, and I confess I held my breath, for this was the moment I had fought hardest to spare them. The moment the family below the roof learns it has been doubted. But she had taken my counsel to the last. She did not speak of traitors or searches or the weeks of watching. She told them only that a wrong had been done to the house from inside it, that it had been quietly traced and quietly ended, that the one who did it was gone, and that not one other soul under that roof had ever fallen under her doubt. I trusted this house, she said, and the trust was not misplaced, for it was this house, its own quiet men, that found the rot and cut it out, asking nothing. I watched 200 faces ease all at once like a held breath let go, and I understood then the true size of what we had bought with patience. Not just a thief caught. A home kept a home. She kept the harder thanks for the steward's hall where she came down herself, a thing the family does perhaps once in a reign, to where Prout stood his post on the back stair as if nothing in the world had changed. She stopped before him. She had walked past him 10,000 times. "Corporal Prout," she said. I am told the words that walked out the servant's door walked back in again because one man chose to be a wall, and to watch from inside it, and to be in no hurry. I will not embarrass you with more than this. The house sees you now. And she inclined her head to him, a dowager, to a corridor sentry, and Prout came to attention and held it, and the only sign of what it cost him was that he could not, for a moment, find his voice. He went back to his post the next day, of course, and the day after, and stands it still, the same plain man in the same plain passage, watching the coal and the linen and the trays go by. The great men in the bearskins keep the front gate, where the crowds and the painted iron are. Prout keeps the throat of the house, where everything that feeds it must pass, and almost no one knows his name. But I know it, and I have learned late and well the thing he knew already, that the strength of a great house is not in its locks or its double-built walls, which a single neat and pleasant man can carry words straight through. It is in the quiet ones who do not move, and do not speak, and do not hurry, and are standing at the right post when the truth at last walks past. They keep the words inside, and by keeping the words they keep the home.